across this country, particularly in the battleground states. Unlike 4 years ago, when mail-in ballots accounted for almost 2/3 of the early vote because of the pandemic, there has been an almost even split this year between mail-in and early in-person voting, with in-person ballots accounting for 54% of all early votes. Now, this was as of this afternoon. And in Green Bay yesterday, former President Donald Trump donned an orange vest and climbed into a garbage truck to try to highlight a gaffe President Joe Biden made just the day before. Now, nearly 160 miles away in Madison, Wisconsin, Vice President Kamala Harris stepped on stage to thousands of screaming students and vowed she would chart a new way forward. Now, each side says it couldn't be closer here, that is in the state of Wisconsin, the state where Biden won by just more than 20,600 votes in 2020. Wisconsin is among a handful of states almost certain to decide the election, an essential piece of the blue wall that is critical to Harris's path to the White House. Trump is attempting a replay of 2016 when he denied Democrat Hillary Clinton a victory by capturing each of the blue wall states, including Wisconsin. And in April of 2022, days after Elon Musk offered to buy the app, formerly known as Twitter, the tech billionaire pledged that under his stewardship, the platform would not take sides in politics. Now, in the 2 years since then, Musk has transformed the platform, once regarded as the global town square, into an echo chamber, amplifying right-leaning causes, and in particular, former President Donald Trump's electoral campaign. Now, according to academic research and public opinion surveys, X's most influential users' engagement metrics and reports about X's working show that he is directly influencing the Trump campaign. A right-wing activist group's reliance on evangelical churches for Republican get-out-the-vote efforts could land the congregations in hot water with the IRS. Turning Point Action, founded by conservative provocateur Charlie Kirk, has held GOP vote-chasing events with at least 22 churches in 6 swing states since March. It is part of Turning Point's push to contact people likely to support former President Trump to encourage them to vote, blurring the line between church and state, and a 501c3 that is supposed to be nonpartisan. And Vice President Kamala Harris has made it official. She will spend election night at her alma mater, Howard University, one of the preeminent historically Black colleges in America. That means the staff of the student newspaper, The Hilltop, and students of the Department of Media, Journalism, and Film are fastidiously preparing to capture history as it unfolds on their very own campus. And with nearly 60 million ballots already cast, everyone is interested in the presidential election, and they're all trying to figure out where the race stands. Lots of conflicting polling numbers out there. And despite so many votes having been cast, it is hard to know what this means and what these polls actually mean. Many people have yet to vote, and exactly how many there will be or how they will split are still unknown. But there is one measure in the early voting data that could be more suggestive about the final results, and that is the number of new voters who have already voted. An NBC News Decision Desk analysis of state voter data shows that as of October 30th, there are signs of an influx of new female Democratic voters in Pennsylvania and new male Republican voters in Arizona, 2 of the most important swing states in this year's election. Well, that's the news of the day, and this is Areva Martin in Real Time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. In this hour, I will be joined by Dr. Michael Fontmore. He's a professor of policy and government at George Mason University. And in hour 2, you know what we do? We go deep. We dig behind those headlines and bring you the stories that people are talking about. Well, it's pretty clear with 4 days before the biggest election of this cycle, and some say the most consequential election of our lifetime, folks are talking about the election, trying to figure out where do we stand, who is up, who is down, and which swing states are going to break for which candidate. Joe Biden has been thrust into this national news with a gaffe he made about garbage. And of course, the right-wing media is trying to make a whole lot to do about that statement. Joe Biden is not on the ballot, though. Kamala Harris is the candidate for the Democratic Party. She's on the ballot, and she didn't make that statement, and she's making it clear as she continues to campaign primarily in the battleground states that she is going to chart a new course, a new administration, that she is a different leader than Joe Biden. But of course, Donald Trump is trying to make a whole lot to do about the statement made by the current president, President Biden. Both of these candidates continue to crisscross the country as they keep trying to target those undecided voters and those voters who have yet to go to the polls yet. Because even if you say you've decided, once you get into the voting booth, what you vote or how you vote is still up to you, and no one knows what any individual might do on election day. So in hour two, we're going to be talking more about this election, where we stand in some of these polls, and that issue of reproductive health, reproductive freedom. How is it driving voters to the polls? What might it mean for a Kamala Harris win if the polls are right, that there are young women in particular all over this country who've been energized by the overturning of Roe v. Wade? So in hour two, we're going to be talking to two experts. One is on the ground in the swing state of Nevada. She's been doing a lot of ballot initiative work, a lot of canvassing, a lot of talking to voters. So we're going to get her take about what she sees on the ground in the great state of Nevada. Also going to be talking with a reproductive health attorney at the UCLA Law Center. So make sure you stick around for hour two. But before I bring on Dr. Fontroy, here's what I'm thinking in real time. I want to thank everyone that has been a part of my 7-state battleground tour. As you all know, about 2 weeks ago, I kicked this tour off in Arizona. And then I traveled to each and every battleground state, stopping at some of the major cities where there were large concentration of Black voters. The purpose of this tour was to connect with those voters. Some call them low propensity. I'll call them irregular voters, high opportunity voters. It was to talk to those voters on the ground and take their temperatures. And it was also to debunk a lot of the disinformation that has been fed to Black voters online, on cable news shows, and maybe even by their own friends and family. So in each state, I convened elected officials, community leaders, grassroots organizers, influencers, and we had a conversation that was taped. It was a taping of a streaming show that I do called The Special Report with Areva Martin. And we taped the show to promote it online. You can go to my YouTube page to watch each and every episode from each of the cities that I visited, each of the swing states that I visited. We created a lot of content that we pushed out on social media because we know this race is being fought on the ground, is being fought on social, is being fought on the airwaves. So we created a lot of content that we are geo-targeting to the states where I participated in these group discussions, in these live tapings, because we want to make sure that as the remaining voters, those voters that have not gone to the polls early, that they have access to accurate information. So follow me on all things social at Areva Martin on Instagram, on Facebook. Like I said, go to my YouTube page and subscribe. You can share that content out. You can look at all the photos and all the video content that we created. I met some amazing people who are doing great work all over this country, some amazing young people, people under the ages of 25 and under the age of 30 who are out knocking doors, who are canvassing, who are activating their social media, activating in their own communities. I met folks who are leading groups, Souls to the Polls, church groups, pastors who are engaging, elected officials from U.S. Congress people. I was with a U.S. Congresswoman from North Carolina, Congresswoman Alma Adams, last night in Charlotte, North Carolina. She also very active on the ground in North Carolina, trying to find those 74,000 votes. In the 2020 election, North Carolina broke for Donald Trump, 74,000 votes in his favor. But this election cycle, North Carolina believes it can break for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. It believes that with a great showing in predominantly Black cities and counties like Charlotte and Raleigh and Durham, that if Black voter turnout is extraordinary in those cities, that in fact North Carolina can turn blue in this election cycle. And of course, the great folks in the blue wall states, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Detroit, Michigan, those states really, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I was there over the weekend, got a chance to attend a rally with the VP, the new mayor of Philadelphia, meet again with local elected officials on the ground in Philadelphia, again, expecting a disproportionate turnout of Black voters in Philadelphia can make up for what may be some losses in Scranton and some other parts of the rural parts of the state of Pennsylvania that Joe Biden definitely would have carried because of his relationships to that part of the state. But lots of celebrities pouring in these battleground states, from Spike Lee to Mark Ruffalo, Don Cheadle, you name it, Robert De Niro, Leonardo DiCaprio, and then the big concerts, John Legend, Bruce Springsteen. Over the next couple of days, you're going to see some amazing performers, entertainers, and performers who will take the stage with the VP and with various surrogates, including Barack Obama, Michelle Obama. So it is go time. It is full court press time. It is leave it all on the field time. And I am just proud to say I've been a witness. I've had a first-hand experience. I've been able to witness firsthand the level of excitement, the momentum, and the efforts that are being put forth. And I just want to say kudos to Vice President Harris. She has run pretty much a flawless campaign. When you think about coming together just 90 days ago, raising $1 billion, engaging hundreds of thousands of volunteers, putting together a ground game, putting together some of those effective ads that you've seen on television, getting a campaign team that was left over from Joe Biden, plus her own campaign team, getting those teams to mesh in the way that they have, and just creating this excitement and turning what were negatives in her own 2020 campaign into incredible positives. So again, our vice president has run an exceptional campaign, and those around her, those surrogates, those people behind the scenes have done just an outstanding job. So no matter what the outcome is of this race, I think we have to just acknowledge that Kamala Harris stepped up when this nation needed her, when the nation was saying that Joe Biden wasn't the right candidate in this moment. She didn't have to do that, but she did. And she stepped up and she's given it 120%. She's in 3 states, sometimes in one day, doing event after event after event, and just giving it 120%. So I'm going to talk more throughout the next 2 hours about what I witnessed on the ground, what voters are thinking, and what we can expect to see next Tuesday as America is going to the polls to vote for the President of the United States. When we come forward, more of today's breaking and trending news right here on KBLA Talk 1580. Stay with us.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580. Are you an entrepreneur looking to take your business to new heights? KBLA Talk 1580 is your partner in success. Every day, we celebrate and elevate Black-owned businesses across our community. Our KBLA SMB Marketplace currently features The Cookie Dip, Badass Bakes, Hair Concoction, Higher Education Accreditation Consulting, LACC Radiology Technology Department, and Malik Books. Your business deserves to be heard. Let KBLA Talk 1580 amplify your voice and connect you with our powerful community of listeners. Email smb@kbla1580.com today. That's smb@kbla1580.com. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Spend an evening with Ambassador Susan E. Rice at Pomona College on Saturday, November 2nd at 7 p.m. for the John A. Payton Distinguished Lectureship. Ambassador Rice is the only person ever to have served as both National Security Advisor and Domestic Policy Advisor. This event is free and open to the public, but tickets are required. Visit pomona.edu/Peyton-ticket to reserve tickets now.
We're with Bridget, whose husband won't be home for months, and whose daughter is due any day. We're with Mike, who's leaving home to protect his family and yours. We're with all service members and their families who need community, connection, and maybe a bit of magic. Are you with them? Learn more at uso.org today.
Are you wet shaving? You'll get razor bumps.
Nah, Pops, I'm good with Gillette Skin Guard. How long you been growing that beard Mama hates anyway?
Since 77, I shaved and got ingrown so bad.
That's why I use the Gillette Skin Guard razor, face scrub, shave gel, and moisturizer, so I don't have to worry about new razor bumps or shaving irritation.
Gillette Skin Guard, huh? Your mama's gonna love this one.
The best a man can get keeps getting better with Gillette Skin Guard. Buy now at a retailer near you.
KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
We are back, and Dr. Michael Fontroy is joining me in this hour. Okay, we are just days away, Doctor, from this consequential election. How are you feeling? What are you hearing from the folks that you are in touch with? I know you have an expansive network of political pundits and experts. So what are the streets saying?
Well, the streets here in D.C. are saying a bunch of things. But everything that is being said is couched in the fact that this is a really close election, much closer than people think it should be, or that people thought it would be. Quite frankly, we were talking about this 6 weeks ago. I would have said at some point in early October, something will happen and it'll break this thing wide open. And it didn't happen. And that's actually a little concerning to me because former President Trump has, 46, 47% of the popular vote right now. And I just can't believe that that's where we are. But having said all that, there are some tea leaves that suggest that Vice President Harris is going to win in a close one. There are also some things that worry me in these numbers. And so everything I'm hearing is saying that we're not really sure. And while people are speaking with their hearts and their guts, there's also the raw numbers, and as a result, there's some real conflict that people are struggling with.
Well, I can tell you after having door knocked in 7 states, and I've talked to hundreds of voters now, whether they showed up at my events, whether I met them at a campaign office or some kind of organizing office, or just met them at their doors, we are literally living in two Americas. I can't tell you who's going to win. Everybody's asked me, what do I think? I have a lot of thoughts, but what I can't say definitively, Professor, is that Trump and the MAGA Republicans and the Elon Musk of the world and the Bezos of the world and the Fox News of the world, they have done an effective job in creating an alternative reality, I would call it, where people exist who are as passionate about Donald Trump, his agenda, as we are about Kamala Harris and what I'll call her progressive agenda.
Yeah. So may I just add quickly to that? It really does speak to the power of misinformation and disinformation, because as you know, so much of what many Trump voters believe is factually false. But yet they're willing to fight a civil war over this stuff. And so I'm deeply worried, regardless of how the election turns out, that what we're seeing is a reflection of misinformation, disinformation, and the absolute travesty of civic education in the United States. which helps to create a full range of double standards and other kinds of belief systems that just don't make sense when compared to facts. One of the points that I hear, and I hear this from Black voters too, is, well, what has she done as vice president? But anybody who spent 5 minutes reading the Constitution lately will tell you that the vice president has very small limit small and limited role to play, and they can't just go out and make policy on their own. They're doing it as the second chair to the president, and these kinds of things are helping to drive voters. And it's unfortunate, and I attribute almost all of it to really bad civic education around the country.
So you're a professor, and so you focus on the lack of civic education, which I agree. Someone who works in the media, I've never been more upset with our media, our corporate media, Washington Post, paper in your neck of the woods, refusing to endorse, Los Angeles Times in my neck of the woods, refusing to endorse, and then learning.
USA Today.
All of these companies owned by billionaires who have a vested interest in a Donald Trump presidency because they stand to make even more billions. Many have big contracts with the government. Many have great ideals, or I don't know if they're great or not, but have big ideals. I should call them that. Like, you know,
they have ideas. We don't know if they're
ideas.
good or bad or big or small.
They want to do things that perhaps a different kind of government would not allow them to do. That is disheartening. We know that they've created these false equivalencies, the way they report on this. I can tell you, Professor, and I want to get your take on this. After that just debacle on Sunday in Madison Square Garden, 5 o'clock in the morning, when I'm usually perusing the news on my phone, I wanted to see how it was going to be reported on. And I tell you, it was like Donald Trump was at the Madison Square Garden. This comedian made a statement. Dr. Phil made a statement. Somebody made a statement. Oh, and by the way, the weather's going to be nice today.
Yeah.
I mean, it was that kind of casual reporting on that. Not any outrage, not like this is a bridge too far. And then JD Vance follows it up by says, get over it, people. It's just a racist joke. When did we become so sensitive that we can't laugh at a racist joke?
So you hit on something that has driven me crazy for the last 9 years, but especially now. You know, I'm on a text chain with a number of Black political scientists, and one of the things that we're sort of wrestling with is, how is it that after all these years, mainstream media is still normalizing those things that reasonable people would see as abnormal? The daily racism, the daily xenophobia, the daily misogyny, the lies, and all of that. And you use the word false equivalency, which I think is absolutely perfect for this kind of conversation. Because in the context of trying to, be, for lack of a better phrase, fair and balanced, a lot of stuff doesn't get reported that should, because you want to try to keep things balanced and even in the reporting that you do. But if one person tells 10 lies and one person tells one, there's no reason to treat them the same. And yet that's what we've had for the last 9 years. So to your earlier point, think about all the people who've received this journalistic malpractice over the course of the last 3, 5, 7, 9 years. It makes perfect sense in that context why it is that such a large voter base, many of whom are going to be negatively and profoundly harmed by a Trump administration, might still be willing to vote for Donald Trump.
That Monday morning, I was asked to do an interview. I was talking to a reporter. She says, well, what do you make of the fact that both candidates are talking about love as their closing argument? I said, wait a minute. Donald Trump isn't talking about love. She said, oh, yeah, he's down. He did a press conference this morning in Mar-a-Lago, and he says his candidacy is all about love and unity. I said, well, that's false.
Just because he says it doesn't make it true.
I said, do you mean love for white supremacy? Love for racism? So she said that as if she wanted me to respond to that question as if legitimately Donald Trump had been running a campaign on love and unity. And I had to stop her. And I mean, we got into kind of a little back and forth. And I don't think she was willing to concede that, because in her mind, she was doing a story on both candidates make closing arguments about love and unity. And that was one of those false comparisons. You created this narrative. Kamala Harris is the only candidate that's been talking about unifying the country. Donald Trump talked in that very speech at Madison Square Garden about deporting people, about tearing up families, but yet she had to do a story on love and unity. And so it's very, very difficult when the media, and I've seen some big time reporters at the New York Times are lashing out, trying to defend themselves, saying that it's not fair for them to be called out. They have a job to do. It's difficult to cover him. They have to report on him. And if he says something, even if it's false, they got to tell it to the public. And so these articles, you'll read them and they'll just tell you 20 things that Donald Trump said. And then, at the bottom you get to, and they says, well, when we fact check these things, they're not, they're not accurate. But you've read them and they've reported on them as if they are facts. And so people run with them. And it's very, 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 as difficult to convince someone that something is false after they have bought into the fact that it's true. When we come forward, I want to talk more about what voters are thinking and how, we should be thinking about these last 4 days, because again, so much conflicting information being targeted to voters, particularly those that have not voted. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580, when we come forward.
Time. More of Areva Martin in real time when we come forward.
I'm Amber Payton with 4 things you should know from BIN News. Donald Trump was seen riding around in a garbage truck to capitalize off of Joe Biden's remark implying that Trump supporters were garbage. Trump spoke at a rally in Wisconsin on Wednesday and rode up in a garbage truck that he said was, quote, in honor of Kamala and Joe Biden, end quote. McDonald's is facing another proposed class action lawsuit after a major E. coli outbreak. The new lawsuit filed Tuesday is now the third the fast food company faces after contaminated onions in its quarter pounders left 90 people sick and 1 dead. U.S. officials are in the Middle East as they attempt to push for ceasefires in Gaza and Lebanon. And an anonymous donor has helped keep a historic Fergus Falls home with Flowing Brook Ministries by covering its outstanding utility assessment. Built 139 years ago by Prince Honeycutt, the city's first Black resident and Minnesota's first Black baseball player, the nonprofit is now raising funds for renovations. Get BIN News on demand 24/7 at BINnews.com.
Downed motorcycle-involved accident in Mid-City remains on the right shoulder of the 10 East of Vermont Avenue, and stop traffic continues from 20th Street over an hour. In Pasadena, watch for the right lane blocked with an accident on the 110 North before Glenarm Street, causing slowing at the moment from Fair Oaks Avenue. Over in Elysian Park on the 5 South after Stadium Way, a 15-minute backup is ahead from Griffith Park Drive as a tanker truck-involved accident is on the right shoulder. And watch for heavy traffic from South El Monte 60 East before Peck Road as a 40-minute backup from the 5 is ahead due to a stall block in the right lane.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com. I started Blindster in 2010 in my garage after I overpaid for new blinds. I researched the industry, hired my mom, and 14 years later, we're one of the largest retailers of custom blinds in the U.S. Don't pay too much for new blinds. Go to Blindster.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Dodgers World Series Victory Parade is scheduled for 11 a.m. Friday in downtown L.A. This will be the Dodgers' first parade since 1988. The Dodgers won the World Series in 2020, but there was no parade because of COVID. After the parade Friday, a celebration will be held at Dodger Stadium starting at 12:30. You need a ticket for that event. L.A. Mayor Karen Bass won her bet with New York City Mayor Eric Adams. Adams promised Bass that he would wear a Dodgers jersey at work on Friday if the Dodgers beat the Yankees. Bass said she is sending Adams his jersey today. Bass was shown at City Hall today wearing a number 43 Dodgers jersey. The Dodgers put the Yankees away in 5 games despite not getting much production from Shohei Ohtani, who will likely be the National League MVP. Ohtani was just 2 for 19 at the plate in the series and had no homers or RBIs. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Beloved Entertainment and the Miracle Theater Foundation present Sweet Spot live with KBLA's own Angelique Francis, Sunday, November 17th. Angelique is live on stage featuring storytellers from the community, colorful and provocative, for us and by us, celebrating our strength and our fire. Come hang out with us as we walk through our neighborhoods, even down our dark alleys, because just around the corner, there's laughter, misplaced miracles, unspeakable pain, and yes, forgiveness. It's all happening Sunday, November 17th, 4 p.m. at the Miracle Theater in Inglewood, 226 South Market Street. Last year, audiences raved. Best show in decades. An unforgettable night. Groundbreaking. Sweet Spot Live was thought-provoking and enlightening. Standing ovations begging for more. Please, more. It was a great night. So back by popular demand is Sweet Spot Live with Angelique Francis. Get your tickets right now at themiracleinglewood.com. That's themiracleinglewood.com. We'll see you in the sweet spot.
To help combat climate change, LADWP is helping neighborhoods have better access to electric vehicles by awarding nearly $130 million in EV rebates to customers just like you. From big savings on used EVs to building new charging plazas, LADWP is charging ahead to help all Angelinos experience the benefits of EVs. Get rebates of up to $4,000 for a used EV and $1,750 for a charger. Learn more at ladwp.com/EV. That's ladwp.com/EV.
This is Congresswoman Maxine Waters. You can call me Auntie Maxine. I'm running for re-election to Congress, and Vice President Kamala Harris is running for President of the United States. We both need your support and your vote. Maxine Waters for re-election to the 43rd Congressional District, and Vice President Kamala Harris for President of the United States. What a team. More affordable housing, support for health care for everyone, more capital for small businesses, more full disability for deserving veterans, lower taxes for the average taxpayer, making the big billion-dollar corporations pay their fair share, a criminal justice system that is respectful and fair for everyone, not a system that locks up the little people while too many of the rich and powerful commit crime and don't get convicted. Fairness and justice for all. Yeah, we can do this. This is Congresswoman Maxine Waters speaking truth to power. This is Congresswoman Maxine Waters, and I approve this message.
Hey, LA residents, it's planting season and the perfect time to get shade trees growing around your home. LADWP and City Plants are giving every resident up to 7 free trees. That's right, 7 free trees delivered right to your door. Trees are great for the environment, help improve air quality, and can help you save on your bill when you use less air conditioning to stay cool indoors. Learn more at ladwp.com/free trees. That's ladwp.com/free trees. With reported hate crimes rising in recent years, California has responded through outreach efforts across state government and in collaboration with community-based organizations for the launch of CA versus Hate. This non-emergency, multilingual hate crime and incident reporting hotline provides an anonymous reporting option for victims and witnesses of hate acts reported in 15 different languages through the online portal and in over 200 languages when calling the hotline. Report anonymously by calling 833-866-4283, Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. or online at any time at cavshate.org.
We're back with Professor Michael Fauntleroy in hour 2. We're going to be talking about reproductive health, reproductive justice, and how it might be driving voters out to the poll in this election cycle. So, Professor, we're down to the wire. 4 days left before Tuesday, which is the final day of voting, not the first day, but the final day. And by all accounts, no matter which poll you're looking at, the numbers are very, very close. Marginal voters, those voters that don't typically vote in every presidential election, they don't vote in every midterm election. What do you think can move them at this late hour?
At this point, I think it's more likely that they stay home than they actually turn out. If they haven't made up their mind, for example, I'm not sure there's anything that can be done to move them, regardless of which side you're talking about, if they're uncertain. Now, if you're, for example, likely to vote for Vice President Harris and you may still be on the fence, maybe there's somebody in your family, for example, that can push you over the edge or push you across the line. Family socialization and small friend networks actually are very impressive and very important in terms of getting people to vote. And the same thing on the other side with former President Trump. But I really think, Areva, it's such this, everybody knows everything there is to know about these candidates. I know Vice President Harris is relatively new to the race, and there's some talk about voters who may not really know her, but they know Donald Trump. So either they are for him or strongly against him, I should say. And as a result, I think the universe of potential voters who could be moved is actually pretty small. And that's why some of the work you've been doing in your Battleground tour is so important, because as you know, in Wisconsin and in Georgia and some of these other states in 2020, the margin was so thin, right? That, and then you add to that North Carolina, which I think is going to be very close, Michigan and Pennsylvania, 100 votes per county could make the difference in some of these states. And so I think it's really about ground game and one-to-one connections, locally based. I mean, the celebrity stuff is good, but ultimately what's going on in your community is going to move you if you haven't already decided to move.
Yeah, exactly. And I said that over and over again to people, is if we could pick up 50 votes in this precinct, 50 votes in that precinct, that's how you can cobble together 20,000, 50,000 additional votes. The rallies are great. The celebrities are great. But the reality is, to go to a rally is about a 5-hour, if not more, chunk out of your day. And the folks who show up at those rallies are the diehard voters. They're the people who voted early. They're the people who are diehard Democrats or diehard Republicans. It's amazing to me, Professor Fauntleroy, that we know this about voters. But what I heard over and over again, when you go into some of these neighborhoods where you're trying to pick up those 30, 40, 50 votes, where have you been? It's hard to build trust and have credibility when someone sees you every 4 years. And I don't want to suggest that the Democratic Party, some of these local parties, haven't done the work in all of these neighborhoods. But surely I was in neighborhoods where folks were angry, where they were apathetic, where they felt like, I only see you guys. And a good friend of mine who has an ad agency, she had some dollars to do some ads. And she was asking me, well, what ad could she do? I said, well, you probably do better off taking that money, going and giving some turkeys away to those neighborhoods. Right. I said, you can't pay for people's votes, but the work that causes people to trust government, and we know Black voters have an issue with government overall. We saw it with COVID, getting the vaccine into Black neighborhoods. So we know what it takes to move Black voters. So why aren't we doing more of that work?
So I think one of the reasons we aren't doing enough of that work is, as you know, this is a 365-day proposition, and you need resources and people to do it all the time. So that's part of it. But I get a little frustrated with the "where have you been" point, because responsible citizenship requires citizens to also be involved and also be present and pay attention to issues, not just when there's a crisis or when there's a presidential election. You know that in 2008, there was a massive turnout for Barack Obama. And then in 2010, many of those same people stayed home, and then the Republicans ended up with control of the House.
Okay, so I'm gonna push back, and I hear you, and of course, I've heard that a lot on the tour. But what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Because if you don't grow up in a household, you're the product of your household. So if you grow up in a house where there's drugs, where there's addiction, where there's violence and dysfunction, you have not been raised to be that kind of responsible citizen. And then you go to a substandard school where they're not teaching you about the importance of civic engagement. So you may not come to that until you're much older in life, if ever. And I have to tell you, Professor Farmer, I saw some neighborhoods in North Philly. I don't even know, like in America, and again, now when I talk to those elected officials, they told me, look, those neighborhoods wouldn't look that bad if those people voted, because when you vote, we're able to drive more money into those neighborhoods. So it's kind of the cyclical thing. And the people are saying, well, the money goes over into these white neighborhoods. So, we know the problem. And I don't want to put blame on anyone, but the reality is we do need those votes.
No question. And Areva, I don't disagree with you. It's a chicken and egg sort of thing. It's a conundrum, right? But we all have a role to play. And if we all played our role, wherever we come into this from, I think things would look different. And I get a little frustrated with that because, those of us who live in and care about neighborhoods and communities that need the most help can't seem to crack the code on getting people to understand the point that you just expressed as told to you. And that is, if you don't vote in Flint, Michigan, right, it's easier to defer maintenance on your underground infrastructure and your kids end up drinking lead water.
Right.
Or Jackson, Mississippi, or all the various communities across the country in which disengaged voters, and by the way, without regard to race, although it acutely impacts Black and brown communities, but disengaged voters also allow elected officials to bypass them when it comes to passing out the resources, because the elected officials know they are not going to pay a price by bypassing those citizens.
Well, I can tell you one of the most powerful experiences I had was in Detroit, Michigan. I was in conversation with the lieutenant governor. His name is Garland Gilchrist. He's an African-American. Well, he's African. He's a black man, highly ambitious, may be the next governor of the great state of Michigan. But on the panel, I had a formerly incarcerated man. I mean, serious time. We couldn't remember if he said 15 or 20 years, but it was serious, prison time.
Right.
Drugs, murder charges. He's out. He's been released. And I had, pretty much all of my panels, I had someone that was formerly incarcerated. Now, this man had a powerful testimony because he works for a violence prevention organization there in Detroit that has been credited for reducing gun violence in that city substantially. That organization was the recipient of American Rescue, which we call ARPA dollars. And he was a walking, talking testimony to the fact that but for those dollars, and I'm talking maybe a couple of $1 million going to that organization, he knows that he would have been back in jail, in prison, not jail, or dead on the streets. And so he could speak to guys on the corner. He could speak to guys who were in gangs. He could speak to the drug dealers, those who are selling ghost guns. And I learned that ghost guns are bigger than drugs in some communities because they make more money. It's become kind of the new hustle. But he was the kind of guy that I was like, my God, I would love to see you out on the campaign trail talking to folks in communities like that community in Detroit all over this country, because he relates to them. He has the credibility, and he is an example of how government can work. Right. Because so often we have this distrust with government. That guy has been to the White House a couple of times. He works with violence prevention advisors in the White House. So he knows the difference of having a Biden-Harris administration. He knows the difference that it made in his life and the difference that he's now making in the lives of others, compared to what we also saw in Detroit was Donald Trump on the stage with some rappers that you nor I have ever heard of that had been pardoned. So they were talking about their own individual situations, which, I don't begrudge them for being pardoned. But this man was talking about how those ARPA dollars filtered down into Detroit and is allowing this organization to improve the lives of, hundreds, if not thousands of young men. And he said something very interesting about this male, bro culture, this toxic masculinity that Donald Trump is pushing. When we come forward, I want to share this with you and get your take on how he sees what Donald Trump is pushing through these, male surrogates that he has on display so prominently, particularly in cities like Detroit. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
From the first day of kindergarten through the day they graduate high school, in California, 38% of students attend a public school that fails to meet minimum health standards. That's why we need Prop 2. Voting yes on Prop 2 will fund urgent repairs at local schools, protect kids from toxic mold, asbestos, and lead, ensure clean drinking water, and repair leaky ceilings and storm damage. Yes on Prop 2. To fix what's actually broken. All funds go to local schools without raising taxes. You heard that right. So join the California NAACP, nurses and teachers, and vote yes on 2. Because all our kids deserve a safe place to learn. Ad paid for by Yes on Prop 2, sponsored by Nonprofit Education, Labor and Business Associations. Ad committee's top funders: California Building Industry Association, California Teachers Association, Coalition for Adequate School Housing.
Dr. Renee here. Did you know this time of year is considered peak asthma season because we typically see a spike in asthma-related hospitalizations? If you have asthma and are having difficulty breathing despite medication, it's time to check in with your doctor so you can help avoid landing yourself in the hospital this season. To learn more about managing your asthma, visit www.luma-edu.com. That's LUMA-edu.com. This message is brought to you by Amgen and AstraZeneca.
You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580, where climate is king. Climate is king.
Politics has become so messy lately, it's hard to find a reason to be hopeful. Hi, my name is Shakira. I'd like to tell you why Adam Schiff gives me hope. My parents raised me to take my right to vote seriously, so I try to stay on top of what's going on. I saw Adam Schiff lead the impeachment and insurrection hearings. He seemed like someone I could believe in. Then I actually met him at the MLK parade in South Central LA this year. Adam listened. He cared. I got to see who he is. He understands the struggle we have with the cost of living, all the parents working extra shifts and taking second jobs to get by. He gets a threat to our democracy and our freedoms. Adam Schiff knows how tough things really are for a lot of us, and I believe he's going to do something about it. It gives me hope, but hope isn't enough. We need to vote for Adam Schiff for Senate.
I'm Adam Schiff, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Schiff for Senate.
As we go a little something like this.
Hey, it is me, D.L. Hugo, and I am thrilled to be heard weekdays in my hometown on KBLA Talk 1580. So check out the D.L. Hugo Afternoon Show weekdays from 2 to 4 p.m. exclusively on KBLA Talk 1580. We got a whole lot to talk about, let me tell you.
That's on the way.
One thing, Professor Fauntleroy, that this violence prevention advocate, his name is Zoe, talked about on that panel in Detroit is the fact that he was keenly aware that what Donald Trump is pushing, this kind of, bro culture, is the reason why he says so many young Black men are engaged in the kind of violence that we see in a lot of urban cities. He says they have bought into this notion that to be a man means, using obscenities and engaging in this just.
So this is something that has been a problem in American politics for quite some time. And I can tell you, as somebody who grew up here in Washington, D.C., at a time in which there were all kinds of drug-driven violence, gun violence that were literally destroying neighborhoods, and including the one in which I grew up, I can tell you, Areva, that there is a really unfortunate and cynical move being made by the Trump campaign and Republicans more generally to cleave the American electorate on gender.
Donald Trump obviously is running for president, but his message to men in general has had an impact in the Black community in a way that's very, very dangerous, because obviously, it results in violence, and that violence results in incarceration and, breaking up of families and communities. And it was troublesome to this young man who figured it out, and is now trying to get others to see to not buy into that. But he said it's pretty entrenched.
Well, Trump is making a bet on relatively low information voters and low propensity voters. And and that's a difficult bet to make. Voters, all of the research, all the public opinion research, and all the electoral vote research will tell you that voters between 18 and 29 are among the least reliable voters. So just because there's some number growth for Trump among these voters doesn't mean that's going to materialize on election day. And so I hear you, I agree with you, but I'm not sure that those numbers are going to turn out in the way that the Trump campaign is betting. Additionally, I need to mention to you and to our listeners that the Howard University Initiative on Public Opinion did a focus group and 2 polls over the course of the last couple of months, specifically looking at Black voters with large sample sizes that are much more robust than you generally see in the polls that we've seen over the course of the last month or so, saying, oh, Donald Trump might get 25% of the Black vote or something along those lines. When you look at those polls carefully, I think it's pretty clear that Donald Trump is going to do better among Black voters, Black male voters, I should point out, in 2024 than he did in 2020. But that number is still going to be within the usual general number that you see for Republican presidential nominees. And so if that in fact turns out to be true, then I think a lot of what he's banking on isn't going to materialize.
So then where is it so close? Because you're saying you're not confident that a lot of, again, you call low propensity, I call irregular voters, are going to vote if they haven't already voted. So that's not making it super tight. You think there's not going to be this large surge of Black voters, Black male voters for Trump. So where are the demographics that have this race so neck and neck?
Thank you for asking. You remember this. In 2016 and in 2020, about 55% of white women voted for Donald Trump. And while
let me tell you this, a poster on the show 2 days ago said that's not going to, she said there's not been in modern times an election where white women didn't vote at least at 50 or above for the Republican, no matter who it is.
Yeah, and by the way, that includes a universe in which in 2024, reproductive choice is a major driver of voters. Now, you mentioned at the top that there's a growth in new voters in some of these states. Almost all of that is younger white women. And so if they turn out, then, the concerns I have about older white women will matter less. But I think.
But do you expect that do you agree that from 2016, 2020, white women voted 50 plus for the Republican? I mean, that's just factual.
Yes, that's factual.
Do you expect that to be 48, 47? I mean, are you expecting there to be some huge drop off in white women voting for Trump?
I don't think it's going to be a huge drop off. I think it will be a lower number, a lower percentage, but the overall turnout number could be bigger, so it may not matter. Mm-hmm. All of the reporting that I'm seeing, and you talked about some of this at the top of the hour, is that there's been an unusually high early vote in some of these states, right? So where are these voters coming from? And so I'm going to be fascinated to see on Tuesday, as you rightly pointed out, the last day to vote, where some of these voters go. It is possible that the vote can be driven up in Nevada, Arizona on reproductive health and still not be enough relative to what we've seen over the course of the last 2 elections. I just want everybody to remember Donald Trump lost the popular vote in both of those elections and in 2016 became president, 2020 lost. So as always, this is a turnout election and we'll see where it lands. We'll know for sure, perhaps late next week sometime, who knows? But I just don't know that as it pertains to Black voters, particularly in the battleground states, that the numbers are going to sort of fall out the way they appear to be reported on currently in the polls.
So, but you're suggesting that you think the black voter turnout is going to be greater, or
No, I think the black voter turnout is going to be huge, but that's going to be driven by black women.
Okay, so you think there's going to be 2008 black voter turnout?
More like 2012. And part of that is because, as you hit on earlier, look, we got to tell the truth about this. I mean, some black men can be driven by some of the same things that white men can be driven by. And so that worries me significantly as it relates to Vice President Harris. Again, I think we have a civic education problem. There are a lot of people holding her to a standard that's unfair based on their misunderstanding of how the vice presidency works. And as you know, in California, there's been a whole lot of talk about her work as a prosecutor, much of which is completely unfounded, but that has percolated over the course of the last few years and could theoretically do some damage too.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see, like you said, if the number of white women voters is greater. So even if they break 50 plus for Trump, the number is so much higher that we still rack up the numbers that we need in order to have a Harris-Wallace victory. Oh boy, lots riding on this. A lot of folks are very anxious. A lot of people having anxiety as a result.
By the way, real quick, I'm going to be on Howard University's campus on Tuesday. If you don't mind, I may barge in on you to give you an update.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. We'll definitely check in with you for sure. Thank you for that. And thank you for joining me in this hour. When we come forward, more on the election that's coming up. The last day to vote is November 5th, 2024. Stay with us. More than 59 million Americans have already cast their vote in the 2024 general election, equivalent to about 40% of the total vote. Unlike 4 years ago, the mail-in ballots accounted for almost two-thirds of the oral vote because of the pandemic. There has been an almost even split this year between mail-in and in-person voting, with in-person ballots accounting for 54% of all early. We're having some technical difficulties. Let's try to work those out. Go to a quick break.
Eva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580. Are you an entrepreneur looking to take your business to new heights? KBLA Talk 1580 is your partner in success. Every day, we celebrate and elevate Black-owned businesses across our community. Our KBLA SMB Marketplace currently features The Cookie Dip, Bad Ash Bakes, Hair Concoction, Higher Education Accreditation Consulting, LACC Radiology Technology Department, and